I'm immigration lawyer John Kasravi, and today we're going to talk about trends in immigration case processing for 2023. A lot of us have our cases stuck and you're wondering what's going to happen, or you're going to file a case and you're trying to get a perspective of what's going on in the immigration department and what can you expect. We're going to talk about that right now. If you haven't already, like and subscribe and ring that bell icon, because a lot of things I say here could change because the government's political. They might have more money to hire people, all sorts of different things. So if you want those updates, please subscribe and ring that bell so you get those updates. Now, we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff. So we're going to try to do timestamps and descriptions so you can jump ahead for the type of case that you have. And we'll try to put some words on the screen so if you fast forward, you catch the topic that's yours. Because we're going to talk about adjustment of status, family-based, consular processing, employment card, EADs, advanced parole, travel permission, consular processing, I-751 case 2 to 10 year green cards, I-90, so many stuff we're going to talk about. So bear with me, but I just want to get this information out at the beginning of the year. So I want to set my thoughts out and for you to know what to expect with the different kinds of cases that you're going to be dealing with. So please be patient, and if you want to jump ahead, check out the timestamps that can help you. So first and foremost, what I'd like to talk about are the marriage green card cases that I do a lot. This is our primary focus at our firm, and I'll sprinkle in other categories as well. If you are going to apply for your spouse, and this information applies to parents of U.S. citizens and minor children of U.S. citizens as well. The first step, if your spouse is overseas or that relative is overseas, is submitting Form I-130 petition for alien relative. In these kind of cases, you first got to prove that the relationship is real between that family member. Now you submit that to USCIS. That case for a U.S. citizen, like a marriage case or a parent of U.S. citizen case, used to take 6 to 8 months. Right now it's taking closer to 12 to 13 months. Along with that, a fiancé visa from I-129F. If you're not married, but you're a U.S. citizen whose fiancé is overseas, that case is also taking 12 or 13 months for them to initially prove that the relationship is real. It's out of control, it's doubled up in time, but that's what we're dealing with right now with regard to USCIS timelines. They said by the end of this fiscal year, it's around September, October, they're going to lower that processing time to 6 months. I don't know if that's going to happen because these backlogs are getting worse and worse. Hopefully we pray that that does happen. So be prepared for that. Now, if you're a green card holder filing for your spouse, it's a different story. Timelines are awful and even worse. Average between 18 to 24 months for the I-130 for a green card holder filing for their spouse. It's really going to be hard on your relationship because that's just to prove that the relationship is real with Form I-130. That does not even include consular processing, dealing with the embassy overseas. So these are there. Now, note that we have cases where randomly they're approved much faster, 3 months for an I-130 approval. It does happen, but average cases are much longer. There is one trick that sometimes works if you're a U.S. citizen filing for your spouse overseas, which is submitting a K-3 petition from I-129F. There are pros and cons to doing this and risks that I can't get into right now, but I've got a ton of videos on YouTube that you can check out, JQK Law, Immigration Talk, K-3 Visa, and I'll explain all of it. But the long and short of it is, randomly, I'd say not so random, 50% of the time, if you start an I-130 petition as a U.S. citizen filing for your spouse, and you file the I-129F as a K-3, the case will get done really fast. We had one completed in like 6 weeks a couple months ago in November 2022. So it's amazing how that can happen. You might want to give it a shot and be mindful of that. Now, one thing I do want you to be very, very careful for is if you're especially filing on your own, a mistake that we see every day at the USCIS law firm because people call us, we got a lot of videos on this, so people contact us about it, is that they submit Form I-130 for their foreign spouse or foreign child or parent, and they mark that they're going to complete the case with adjustment of status. That's the application package in the United States instead of sending it to consular processing to be finished at the interview. When you mistakenly do that, USCIS, the Immigration Department, will keep the case in the United States, and you have to make a special request with Form I-824 to have that case sent out to the embassy. That costs extra money and a lot more time. Timelines are out of control, 6 to 12 months average, if not more. Randomly, it'll get done in a month or two. We have those too, but most of them 6 to 12 months for them to go anywhere. And again, you have to pay much more money. A lot of times when people do this and they come for us, not only do we submit the I-824, but we just do a new I-130 petition as well because we don't know which one's going to go faster. But don't make that mistake and be very prepared for it. Now, we're talking about family-based cases. I do want to reference cases where U.S. citizens file for adult married children or brothers and sisters. It's really, really bad out there. The timeline for these cases ranges from 12, 15, 20, 22 years. And the line is not moving forward. So the same amount of time or the same line that existed, that's the best way to put it. this line's stuck and it's not moving forward. Whether you filed a case last year or today, all this is just piling up. Nothing's moving forward. So it's a very awful situation, and it becomes really, really bad if they have minor children overseas, your nieces and nephews or your grandchildren. They could age out and not be considered part of that green card application. So be very careful of that. Keep an eye out on ways you can protect the family members through that. Now, employment-based cases are not faring so much better. There's a backlog emerging in all the categories, EB1, EB2, EB3, especially India, China, but for all categories as well. You need to check what's called the visa bulletin every month to see the situation on that. But to add insult to injury, a lot of the embassies are backed up and not doing interviews, and that creates a big problem in this timeline, because you might be ready to go to get your green card, your time's ready, they don't schedule an interview, it takes so long, backlog happens, and you're at the front of the line, all of a sudden you get pushed back, and that's happened to many thousands, tens of thousands of Indians in India, for example, right now. Really, really terrible situation. Now, if you are doing consular processing for family cases, this backlog the embassy is a major issue as well, depending on which embassy you're dealing with. We have cases that go to Europe, Australia. These get done pretty quickly once the National Visa Center approves the case. So let me back up what's going on there. So when the I-130 gets approved, they send the case from USCIS to the Department of State. The first agency within the Department of State is called the National Visa Center, the NVC. Now, the embassy originally comes in and collects all the necessary documents. They're super backed up, so once you submit that, first of all, just for them to notify you with the case number to start working with them takes between 2 to 8 weeks. Once they permit you to start working with them and you upload documents, it takes another 2 to 8 weeks for them to review your documents. Right now, when I'm recording this, and hopefully I pray it changes, but about half the time, they'll come back to you and say you're missing documents when you're not missing documents. They're doing an error. And for you to tell them you're making a mistake, go back to it, it's going to be another 2 to 8 weeks for them to review it. So expect huge delays there. Having said that, once they do what's called documentarily qualify or DQ a case, they said documents are okay, we'll talk with the embassy to schedule an appointment with you. It depends on which embassy you're dealing with, how long that's going to take. If you're in Europe or Australia, it could be a couple of months. But if you're even from Canada, huge backlogs over a year. If you're in India, Pakistan, Iran, you could be 2 or 3 years waiting, unfortunately. Super duper backed up, very bad. So if you want to bring your spouse and your child, for example, you might be waiting between the I-130 and consular processing, 3, 4, 5 years. It's out of control. This is something you really need to talk with your local congressman about and make some noise about, because it's not fair for families to be this disrupted and so far away from each other for this period of time. Which leads to another issue, and another way you can deal with this is called Mandamus and APA lawsuits. These are lawsuits against government for government delay. I've seen it work sometimes to force them to schedule an interview, or if an interview is scheduled, an interview does happen, sometimes they come back and say we need to do what's called administrative processing, which means we need to think about your case longer, and then that case gets stalled 3, 6, 9 months, a year or more, even more delays. Now, what a lot of times we do is after 6 months, we file a lawsuit and say, hey, this is taking too long, it's not fair, make a decision. We can't force them to make a positive decision, but if you have a good case and we know it, this is probably going to get approved. So you want to look into filing these lawsuits and talking with an attorney that does it. Contact our firm, we have an experienced lawyer that handle these cases. Now, you might hear about things called interview waivers, which is they're waiving the interviews at the embassy. This is happening for non-immigrant visas, temporary visas for work or schooling or education or tourist visas. They don't waive the green card interview. They got to talk with you because it's so serious. Now, pulling it back to adjustment of status, getting the green card in the United States, there is good news on this immigrant interview waiver requirement. Embassies by statute are forced to do the interview. They're talking about changing that up. But with USCIS in the United States, they have the ability, based on their rules, to waive the interview. And it's been happening. It's been magic. Cases which I would never have thought had the interview waived. For example, marriage cases where the couple is new and they didn't have that much evidence of relationship, well, all of a sudden getting the green card in the mail. So there's some really good news for pushing the case forward in the United States. But be mindful, they've updated Form I-485 application for adjustment of status. The application you're going to use to get a green card in the United States, they added about 1.5 pages of information about financial issues related to the couple or foreign person in particular that's filing for adjustment of status, about how much money they make, how much debts they have, what education they have, what training they have, if they've gotten public assistance from the U.S. government or not. So be mindful of this extra requirement in the application. It may create more complications. But in general, when it comes to timelines, it varies dramatically depending on which field office, what city is going to be handling your case. For example, Los Angeles handles cases in LA, New York handles cases in New York, Each office is different. Some will get a case done in 3 or 6 months. Some will take 1 or 2 years. And if your case is a U.S. citizen case or LPR marriage case, it's all over the place. So when it comes to timelines, no real clarity, but most of them will get done within a year in most places. Having said that, about these delays, a lot of times people come and say, hey, how can we do expedite requests? How can we make a case go faster? That is possible. Expedites are possible in this system. You know, if you go to USCIS.gov, they talk about expedite requests, how to do that. Now, there's different things you can request expedite. It could be the I-130 petition, and we've done those. It's gotten really, really hard to get an I-130 expedited because it's taking so much longer. They're so inundated with cases and they don't have the staffing for it. Along with that, so many people are learning about the process of expediting. We share a lot of the tips and how to do expedites. Just watch our videos on the JK Law Firm YouTube page. But because of that, it's gotten harder. We have had success, but sometimes it requires multiple requests, getting Congress people involved, getting other people involved, maybe you have a lawsuit to get it expedited. So be prepared for that. Another expedite may want to come for work permits. When you file for adjustment of status in the United States, you can also file for a work permit, EAD, employment authorization document, or advanced parole, special travel permission, because you're not allowed to travel when adjustment of status is pending in most cases, but you can request special permission. But those are taking like 6 to 8 months to get right now. The work permits last year, this time were sped up. You would have gotten 6 weeks. Right now it's taking 6 to 8 months all over again, taking forever. You could request an expedite if you have a good reason. So sometimes that works. If you need to travel and don't have time to make an expedite request, because expedite requests could take 30 to 60 days. It's not that much expedited. But if you need emergency travel, you get what's called an emergency advanced parole request. You have to request an in-person info pass appointment to go to the USCIS office in person to plead your case. You get emergency permission to travel, and that can take a few days to get. Now, they've gotten really stringent on these. They're very difficult. Just getting an appointment is hard. They play games with you. We had one case where a gentleman, his father was not doing good in the hospital, as you can tell, like how that story goes. And it took them like 2 weeks just to return a call that they were supposed to return in like 48 hours. A lot of fighting. Luckily, he was able to get it with a lot of documentation, a lot of back and forth, multiple requests, congressperson involved. It's a fight. It's a real fight to get what should be simple, but that's what we're dealing with right now. But be prepared. These things are there, but again, more and more delays like as I was talking about. Speaking of more delays, I-751 removal of conditions. This is if you have a green card based on marriage and the marriage was new. When you got the green card issue and marriage was less than 2 years old, you have to file for removal of conditions when the time comes. Essentially, you want to double check to make sure that relationship was real. This process has gone so long that when you file it, USCIS automatically gives you a receipt that says a 2-year extension because they know it's going to take 2 or more years to get that I-751 removal of conditions approved, to prove that your relationship was real. Now, sometimes we get it done in 6 months in our cases, sometimes it takes 2 years. That's all over the place. A lot of times if you've been married and living with a U.S. citizen, we file for U.S. citizenship when this process is happening. And because citizenship timelines are better, that'll push the case forward. But having said that, it's normal for it to take that long, as it is for Form I-90 if you have a green card, a 10-year green card, and you're going to renew that. That's taking so long that they're giving 2-year receipt notices for those too, so it'll cover you out of control, completely out of control. But these are massive delays in timeline that are normal, so you shouldn't freak you out, but these are what we're dealing with. Now, some side issues, the reentry permit. This is for people who have green cards and they need to be outside the United States for more than 6 months. You apply for a reentry permit to tell the government ahead of time that, listen, I'm not going to be here for a while. Don't take my green card away. I don't plan on abandoning my green card status. And these are super backed up too. We have reentry permits we filed taking 1 or 2 years and still no approval. So a person's like, what am I going to do? So be prepared. The reentry permit's super backed up. It's better to apply for it so you have the argument to say, listen, I told you guys, not my fault you're taking this long, but my absences should be cured or at least should have some benefit to me because I did file this reentry permit. Something to look into. Now finally, I just want to reiterate the Child Status Protection Act issue. If you have children that are part of your case who are nearing the age of 21 who could potentially age out, you got to be really cautious and make sure to lock their case in, whether it's with Form I-24 or submitting the consular processing paperwork in time. It's a more complex issue. I've done videos about the Child Status Protection Act. Check that out on JK Law's YouTube page. But suffice to say is be very mindful if you have children that are going to come part of your application and they're nearing 18, 19, 20, you got to make sure you do what you got to do to keep that kid safe and locked in the case because these delays create a lot of problems. A lot of people are going to get really hurt, have gotten really hurt because of the backlogs in the system, unfortunately. Will lose out on getting the green card. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you. Now I know I talked really fast, I went through this stuff really fast. Check out the timestamp to go to a specific area. I've done videos, ton, 2-minute videos, 10-minute videos on all these topics. You can check it out, the JK Law Firm's YouTube page. But if you want to have a private video consultation with myself or my associates, email us at info@jqqlaw.com. That's info@jqqlaw.com. And there we could privately talk about your case, look at your receipt notice, look at your paperwork to see what's going on. It's a wild system, but every day we're getting approvals and getting people through it. That's what we're here to do. That's what we love doing, is getting you to where you need to be. So with that, thank you so much. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that bell icon to get the updates. I'm immigration lawyer John Kasravi, wishing your family a wonderful 2023. God bless. Thank you for watching this educational program. To get the latest videos, click the subscribe button and the notification bell icon. Also, help us help the immigrant community by liking this video and sharing it with your family and friends. You can also find us on other social media sites like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Twitter, where you find the latest updates on immigration news, policy changes, and tips. Be safe and God bless. See you soon.